Hi everyone, today we're going to be working on naming alcohols. So I'm going to go ahead and do a couple practice ones here. I'm going to go ahead and start with this one. So the first thing you want to do whenever you're naming alcohols is you want to be able to recognize that it's an alcohol. So alcohols are always going to have this OH group attached, and it's going to be an OH by itself, so that's really important. You'll have that OH attached to just any, you can have it on any carbon in a chain, but as long as you have that, that's going to be an alcohol. So for this one, the numbering is kind of the same like when you're naming alkenes, except instead of wanting to look for the number for the double bond, you want to look at the number where that OH group is. So the first thing I'm going to figure out is what I want to number that OH as. So I can either go from right to left or from left to right. So if I went left to right, that OH would be on the third. So I don't want to do that because if I went right to left, if I went right to left, it would be on the first carbon. So I'm going to go from right to left. Okay, I'll get rid of some of these numbers here. Okay, so I'm going to start with that. And I'm just going to go ahead and write my 1 there, because that's where my OH is. And since I'm looking for that smaller number, I'm going to choose that over 3. So I'm going to put 1, and then I'm going to put propan, because that's always my beginning whenever I have something like this. So if it was just 3 carbons, it would be propane. And then if I had a bond on my first carbon, like where that OH is, a double bond, then that would be 1 propene. But for this one, for alcohols, you want to keep that A in there. And the only thing you're doing with alcohols is putting in the OL at the end. So that's your signature thing for alcohols. So this particular one would be 1-propanol. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show you one more. Okay, and this one's a little bit harder, but this is probably something you'll see more often than this first one. Okay, so you may see something like this. So you'll have like multiple OHs on there. So I still know it's an alcohol, but I have 2 now instead of the one I had before. And there's also a good chance that you'd have some other thing hanging off of carbon. So whenever you're naming this, the very first thing you want to name is the groups that aren't your family. So since those OHs are telling me that's an alcohol, I'm going to save those for the end and put those with the parent. So meaning that chain of 4 here. Okay, so that's your parent chain. It's that chain of 4. And the first thing I'm going to write is that chlorine, because that's just an alkyl group, and that's really not going to tell you anything about the parent. So the parent always goes at the end, so I'm going to write that chlorine first. In terms of numbering, no matter what you have or where your other groups are, in this one, your OHs are always going to take precedence. So meaning your OHs are going to get your smallest numbers. So because of that, I'm going to count from left to right. So that CO is going to have 4 as its number. So it's on the 4th carbon. Whenever we're naming this, that chlorine, the term for that is chloro. And all those alkyl groups are going to end in an O, usually. So we're just going to call this 4-chloro, and that's going to cover that chlorine. Okay, so the only other groups we have are those OHs. And the problem, though, is I have 2. So since they're both on the 2nd carbon, I'm going to go ahead and write 2 twice. Because that's going to tell me I have 2 alcohol groups instead of just 1. And they're going to tell me what numbers, or what number carbon those 2 are on. So even though it's both 2, you want to put the 2 twice, so we know that both those OHs are on that 2nd carbon. So for my parent, like we did with the first one, this one's going to be butane, because if it was just a chain of 4, it would be butane. So the only thing we're changing is taking that E off and adding that OL. So this name in particular is going to be 4-chloro 2,2-butanol.